Hello, in this hypertension video we will discuss about the systemic renin angiotensin aldosterone system and cardiac renin angiotensin aldosterone system. So in this way let's begin to understand from the stress. This is the chronic stress, which that is chronic stress will be psychological or physiological, which that will be knocking in higher brain cortex, the cerebral cortex, will stimulate the pituitary gland, and this chronic stress will stimulate the pituitary gland through hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus contain a neurosecretory cell. This neurosecretory cell, which that is release the adrenocorticotropic releasing factor, which that release, and in this way the adrenocorticotropic hormone will be stimulated and released from this hypothalamus to the pituitary gland, adenohypophysis, and this yellowish color is known as ACTH, will bond with the adrenal gland to release the adrenocorticotropic releasing hormone released to the stress hormone from the adrenal ACTH receptor. From the ACTH will stimulate the stress hormone, and this can be corticosteroid and catecholamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, as well as glucocorticoid. So this will lead to basically go into the hypertension. But here is the adrenergic nerve, which that is fast, and in this way first will be epinephrine will be released from the adrenergic nerve, and in this way it will be stimulate the vasoconstriction, and endothelial damage will be occur when the chronic stress will be occur, and in this way the dysfunction of the endothelial cells lead to constriction and lead to hypertension. So this is basically the corticosteroid and catecholamine. Our stimulation will lead to recruitment of pro-inflammatory cells, for example neutrophil, macrophage, and monocytes, and acute phase protein CRP, fibrinogen, protein S, alpha-1 protease inhibitor, etc. And oxidative stress and pro-inflammatory cytokines will be produced, and these all things which that will lead to low grade vascular inflammation. This low grade vascular inflammation will lead to endothelial damage, and after this endothelial damage the dysfunction will be occur, lead to hypertension because the constriction of vessel, and in this way the chronic stress is the best damaging effect of the endothelial. But let's begin to understand. This was the first general overview of the hypertension, endocrinology, and as well as the nervous system which that will be involved. So let's begin to understand the systemic renin angiotensin aldosterone system. In this way here you can see the smoking will stimulate more this chronic stress. And on the other hand, here is the angiotensinogen will be produced from the liver through systemic renin angiotensin aldosterone system, and will lead to angiotensin, and in this angiotensin will be converted through a renin will produce from the kidney, and in this way the renin will be used for the angiotensinogen conversion into the angiotensin 1. This angiotensin 1 is basically the convert will from the angiotensin 1 converting enzyme. This ACE basically convert the angiotensin 1 into the angiotensin 2. After this angiotensin 2 conversion, the cardiomyocyte, which that will be angiotensin 2 target to the cardiomyocyte also at blood vessel for constriction, and on the other hand the cardiomyocyte, which that is here you can see and understand. In this way the angiotensin 1 receptor are present, which that will be bind with the cardiomyocyte, will lead to hypertrophy. This hypertrophy will rigid and increase the size of heart, will lead to decrease the input of the heart while the output of the heart will be increased, will lead to hypertension because the output will be more but input will be less due to the constriction of blood vessel. So on the other hand, the disturbed the microvasculature architecture and the coronary microvascular dysfunction. So remember these things. Let's begin to understand the cardiac renin angiotensin aldosterone system. So what will be happening in the cardiac? So this is the basically both are interconnected to each other, but I am explaining the separately due to the there are different function, because here is the angiotensinogen produced same from the heart, which that will be converted into the angiotensin 1 from the angiotensin converting enzyme from the heart, and in this way the renin also convert the angiotensinogen into the angiotensin 1, and angiotensin 1 after the converting the angiotensin converting enzyme will convert the angiotensin 1 into the angiotensin 2. After the angiotensin 2 conversion, angiotensin 2 conversion, the angiotensin 1 receptor are present in the endothelial cell, which that will be bind and microvasculature will be effect, and in this way the microvasculature changes will lead to vasoconstriction. This vasoconstriction is basically constrict the blood vessel. After the constriction of the blood vessel will lead to high blood pressure, and that is known as the hypertension. And impaired vasodilation will be occur, and in this way the vasoconstriction will be more, will lead to hypertension. So here you can see the adrenal gland, which that angiotensin 2 also target to the adrenal gland to secrete the aldosterone. This aldosterone, that is why it is known as the renin angiotensin aldosterone system, because it will be target to the aldosterone will target to the aquaporin 2. This creation of aquaporin 2 channel will lead to reabsorption of water and sodium. After the reabsorption of water and sodium will retention in our blood will lead to increase the water and sodium, and volume will be increased. When volume will be increased in the blood vessel will lead to hypertension due to the pressure will be created. So this generation of the pressure will lead to blood vessel pressure will lead to hypertension. So on the other hand, here is the coronary artery, which that will be transfused and perfusion will be decreased due to the coronary disease can be occur, and in this way the perfusion when decreased the heart function will be decreased, and in this way the heart failure is possible. So the less oxygen due to the blood vessel constriction, cardiac output will be more due to the more constriction, and in this way the hypertrophy will be increased. When the hypertrophy will be increased, it will be constrict the blood vessel, as well as the rigidity of the heart walls will be increased, will lead to input of the heart will be decreased. In this way the filling of the heart with the blood will not completely, so that is why the hypertension will be increased when the output will be increased. So in summary, the inflammation will lead to increase the renin angiotensin aldosterone system increase, will lead to angiotensin 2 will increase, will lead to hypertension. So anyhow, in this way the salt consumption during the diet will lead to also cause the hypertension due to the our production of salt in our blood, our consumption of salt. That is why the increase of the water due to the retention of salt, and that will lead to hypertension. While here the causes of hypertension lead to smoking, stimulate and inflammation, sympathetic activity will be increased. So when sympathetic activity will be increased will lead to hypertension. Why? Because the adrenergic nerve ending will stimulate to produce epinephrine, while the adrenal gland activation. So the overweight and obese, which that will lead to hypertension. Lack of physical activity and salt in diet and alcohol consumption, stress physically or physiologically, older age, genetics, family history, chronic kidney disease and adrenal thyroid dysfunction, and diabetes also involved for the cause of hypertension. But let's begin to understand in the another video for understanding more about the hypertension, as well as the on the other hand there are a lot of things we will discuss in next video.